The night Elena left, Adrian didn't ask where she was going. He only asked one question quietly, almost politely. Did you ever once think I wouldn't notice? She froze, not because of what he said, but because of how late he chose to say it. The apartment on the 47th floor overlooked the kind of skyline people move to New York City for glass towers, catching the last light of day, taxis threading through avenues like veins of motion, everything alive, everything in progress. Inside, nothing moved. Adrian Cole stood by the window, one hand in his pocket, the other loosely holding a glass of bourbon he hadn't touched. The ice had already melted. He didn't notice. Behind him, Eleanor was speaking. I think we've been pretending for a while. Her voice was measured, careful, as if she were negotiating terms, not ending a marriage. Adrian didn't turn around. How long is a while? He asked. It wasn't anger. That was the unsettling part. No raised voice, no tremor, just a question placed precisely where it would cause the most discomfort. Elena hesitated. A fraction too long. I don't know, months, maybe longer. The city outside flickered as lights came alive one by one. Adrian watched the reflection in the glass, her silhouette behind him, arms crossed, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, a micro-movement. He had started noticing those things years ago. You don't know, he repeated softly, or you don't want to say. I'm trying to be honest, Adrian. He finally turned. There was no accusation in his eyes. That, more than anything, made her uneasy. You're trying to be careful, he corrected. A silence stretched between them, not empty but dense, like something waiting to collapse. Eleanor exhaled. This isn't working anymore. Define this as... He nodded slowly as if she had just confirmed a theory. And when did you decide that? He asked. She looked at him, then really looked, searching for something. Anger maybe, hurt, anything that would make this easier. I didn't decide it alone. There it was. Not a confession, not yet, but a shift. Adrian's gaze flickered, persisted for a second, to the phone on the kitchen counter. Face down, silent. He had noticed when it started being placed that way. Marcus, he asked. Eleanor's breath caught, a microsecond, barely visible, but enough. You already knew, she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Adrian held her gaze, unblinking. I asked you a name, he replied. Another pause, then almost reluctantly, yes. The word landed softly, but it didn't echo. It didn't shatter anything. It just settled, as if it had been there all along. Adrian nodded once. Not in acceptance, in confirmation. How long? He asked. Elena swallowed. It's not what you think. That's not an answer. It didn't start like that. It never does. Her eyes flashed frustration breaking through. Why are you being like this? Like what? Calm, detached. Like you're observing me instead of talking to me. Because I am. The thought came precise and immediate, but he didn't say it. Instead, he set the glass down. Do you love him? He asked. This time she didn't hesitate. Yes. The word was firmer now, anchored. Adrian studied her, not the answer, but the certainty behind it. And you think he loves you? He said. I know he does. A faint smile touched Adrian's lips. Not warm, not kind, just knowing. Of course you do. Elena's expression tightened. What is that supposed to mean? It means, he said slowly, you've already rewritten the story. What story? The one where this makes sense. She stared at him. You're twisting things. No, he said quietly. I'm trying to understand how you justified it. Her jaw clenched. Maybe because I felt invisible, Adrian. There it was, not desire, not passion, justification. You were always composed, controlled, predictable, she continued. Marcus, he listens, he sees me. Adrian let the words settle. Invisible. He glanced again briefly at the phone on the counter, then back at her. And I didn't see you, he said. It sounded like agreement, but something in his tone made her frown. I'm not saying you're a bad person, she added quickly. This just happened. Nothing just happens. Again, the thought remained unspoken. Instead, Adrian nodded. So, what happens now? He asked. Elena blinked. What do you mean logistics? He clarified. You're leaving? Yes. Tonight? A beat, yes. He absorbed that. No visible reaction. Have you already packed? He asked. She hesitated again. Yes. Another confirmation. Another piece fitting into place. Adrian walked past her close enough that she instinctively stepped aside and into the bedroom. The closet door was slightly ajar. Inside, a section was empty, not recently cleared. Carefully cleared, he ran his fingers along the shelf. No dust disturbance, no rushed movement. This had been planned. For how long? Behind him, Elena spoke again. I didn't want to hurt you. Adrian let out a quiet breath. That's usually when people do the most damage, he said. He turned back to her. For the first time, something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not grief, but something sharper. Clarity. Does he know you're here? Adrian asked. What? Marcus. Does he know you're telling me now? She frowned. Of course. Adrian held her gaze a second longer than necessary, then nodded. Good, he said. The word felt misplaced. Eleanor's unease deepened. Why Adrian walked past her again back into the living room. He picked up his phone this time, unlocked it, scrolled, stopped, then looked up at her. Because he said quietly, I'd hate for anyone to be surprised later. Something in the way he said it made her stomach tighten. What does that mean? Adrian's eyes didn't leave hers. You'll find out, he replied. Not a threat, not a promise, just inevitability. A silence fell again, heavier this time. Elena picked up her bag. For a moment it looked like she might say something else, explain more, apologize properly, but instead she just nodded. I'm sorry, she said. Adrian didn't respond. He simply watched as she walked to the door, hand on the handle, a pause, then she left. The door clicked shut with a soft final sound. Adrian stood there, unmoving. The city outside continued as if nothing had changed. Cars moved, lights flickered, lives unfolded. Inside, the air felt rearranged, not broken, reconfigured. He looked down at his phone again, at the message thread he hadn't opened in days. Marcus's name at the top. Unread, Adrian's thumb hovered over it, then stopped. Instead, he locked the screen, set the phone down, and turned back to the window. In the reflection, he was alone now. Completely. But his expression hadn't collapsed. It had sharpened, as if something long anticipated had finally arrived. The first time Adrian noticed it, it wasn't dramatic. No arguments, no slammed doors, no obvious betrayal. Just a pause, slightly too long before Elena answered his question. Do you want to come to the gallery opening on Friday? He had asked, scrolling through emails at the kitchen counter. The morning light poured in, through the glass panels, clean and indifferent. Eleanor stood by the sink, rinsing a cup that was already clean. I'll see, she said. Not yes, not no, just distance. Adrian glanced up, just briefly. That was the moment, the micro-shift. A hesitation where there used to be ease. You'll see, he repeated. Yeah, I might have plans. With who? The question came out neutral, casual, too casual. Elena didn't turn around. I don't know yet. Marcus mentioned something. Marcus. The name landed like a familiar object placed in a slightly unfamiliar spot. Adrian nodded once, eyes returning to his screen. Right. He didn't ask more, but he noticed. Weeks passed like that, not ruptures, just erosion. Eleanor stopped asking what time he'd be home. Stopped texting during the day. Their conversations became logistical, efficient, stripped of anything unnecessary. Did you sign the lease extension? Yeah. Did you call the contractor? I will. No conflict, no warmth, just function. And somehow Marcus was there more often. At first, it made sense. He had always been part of their lives. Late dinners, spontaneous drinks, inside jokes Adrian himself had built with him over years. But something shifted in the rhythm. Marcus started arriving before Adrian got home. I ran into him near the office. Elena would say, too quickly. Thought we'd grab something to eat. The first time Adrian smiled. Good. You shouldn't wait for me. The second time he nodded. By the fifth he stopped responding. One evening Adrian walked into the apartment and found them mid-conversation. Not unusual. But the silence that followed was. Eleanor was sitting on the couch, legs tucked under her, leaning slightly toward Marcus. He was saying something quiet, intent. When Adrian stepped in, the sentence cut off. Not finished, just removed. Hey, Marcus said, standing up a second too fast. Didn't hear you come in. Adrian set his keys down slowly, clearly. Elena smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We were just talking about a project Marcus is working on. Adrian looked at Marcus. The one you told me about last week. A flicker. Marcus hesitated. Yeah, that one. Adrian held his gaze for a second longer than comfortable, then nodded. Sounds interesting. He moved past them into the kitchen. Behind him, their conversation didn't resume. Later that night, Adrian stood in the doorway of the bedroom. Elena was already in bed, phone in hand, the screen casting a soft glow across her face. "You're coming to sleep?" she asked, not looking up. "In a minute." She nodded. A pause. Then her fingers moved, typing. Adrian watched. Not the content. The rhythm. Fast, familiar, unfiltered. Not how she texted him anymore. "Who are you talking to?" he asked. Again neutral, again casual. Elena didn't miss a beat, just a friend. Adrian leaned against the frame. "Marcus," he asked. This time there was the smallest delay. "Yeah," he nodded. "Of course." She glanced up, then something defensive flickering behind her eyes. "Is that a problem?" Adrian shook his head slowly. "No." And he meant it, not because it didn't matter, but because the answer was already forming somewhere deeper. The next fracture came quietly. A dinner invitation. Adrian had booked a table at a place Eleanor loved months in advance, something he used to do without thinking. When he mentioned it, she blinked. "Oh, Friday." "Yes, I think I already have plans." With Marcus, Adrian said. Not a question. Eleanor exhaled irritation surfacing. "Why do you keep saying it like that? Like what? Like it means something?" Adrian studied her. "You tell me," he said. Silence. Then she looked away. "I'll cancel." "No," Adrian said immediately. She frowned. "What? Don't cancel." "Adrian, I mean it." His voice was calm. Too calm. "You should go." There was something in the way he said it, final, almost deliberate, that made her hesitate. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Yeah." Another pause. "Okay." And just like that it was settled. A decision made without him, about something that used to belong to them. That night, Adrian sat alone at the reservation. The waiter asked twice if he was expecting someone. "No," Adrian said the second time, a faint smile on his lips. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Across the room, couples leaned into each other, conversations soft and private. Adrian watched them, not with envy, but with a kind of detached curiosity, as if observing a structure he once understood, now slightly altered. His phone buzzed. A message. From Elena. "Sorry." It ran late. Adrian looked at it, then at the time, then back at the message. He didn't reply. Instead, he opened another thread. Marcus. Unread messages, stacked quietly. He didn't open those either, just stared at the name, then locked the screen. The real shift happened at home. Not in what was said, but in what was no longer his. Eleanor rearranged the living room one afternoon. Subtle changes. A chair moved closer to the window, a lamp replaced. Adrian noticed immediately. "You changed it," he said. Eleanor smiled lightly. "Yeah, I thought it felt better this way." Adrian stepped into the room, scanning it. "Marcus suggested it," he asked. The smile faltered. "We talked about it." "Of course you did." Adrian nodded slowly. "It works," he said. And it did. That was the problem. Days later, Adrian reached for a glass in the kitchen. It wasn't where it used to be. He paused, opened another cabinet. There, reorganized, efficient, logical, just unfamiliar. "Did you move these?" he called out. "Yeah," Eleanor replied from the other room. "It makes more sense that way." Adrian stood there, hand resting on the cabinet door. More sense? For who? That night, he lay awake beside her. Eleanor's breathing was steady, even, peaceful. Adrian stared at the ceiling, present, but no longer central, not in her thoughts, not in her decisions, not even in the space they shared. The realization didn't hit like a shock. It settled, quietly, like dust. He turned his head slightly, looking at her profile in the dim light. For a moment, something almost like sadness flickered across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by something else, something colder, more precise. Adrian reached for his phone on the nightstand, unlocked it, opened Marcus's contact. His thumb hovered. Then Instead of calling, instead of confronting, instead of asking, he tapped something else. Notes. A blank page. He stared at it for a long moment, then began to type. Not accusations, not questions, observations, dates, times, patterns, small details no one else would think mattered, but Adrian did, always had. Beside him, Elena shifted slightly in her sleep. Her hand brushed against his arm, a familiar gesture, automatic, unconscious. Adrian looked at it, didn't move away, but didn't respond either. The contact lingered for a second, then faded, just like everything else. In the reflection of the dark window across the room, the image was clear, two people in the same bed, only one of them still fully there, and Adrian knew this wasn't the moment things broke. This was the moment he realized they already had. It happened on a Tuesday, not because Tuesdays meant anything, but because nothing about the day suggested an ending. Adrian returned home just after 6:40 p.m. earlier than usual. The elevator ride up had quiet, the mirrored walls reflecting a version of him that still looked intact, tie-loosened sleeves, rolled expression, unreadable. The door was unlocked. That was the first irregularity. Not alarming, just misplaced. He stepped inside. The apartment was too quiet. Not empty, but quiet in a way that suggested something had already concluded. Eleanor, he called. No answer. Adrian set his keys down carefully on the console. The sound echoed more than it should have. Then he saw it. A suitcase. Not large, not dramatic, just enough. Placed near the door. Ready. Not being packed, already packed. He didn't move toward it immediately. Instead, his gaze shifted slowly, deliberately around the room. The chair by the window, still angled slightly inward. The lamp, Marcus had suggested. The absence in the bookshelf where Elena used to keep her photography albums. Not gone suddenly. Removed over time. He had seen it. He just hadn't interrupted it. Footsteps behind him, soft, measured. I didn't expect you home this early. Adrian turned. Eleanor stood a few feet away, hands loosely clasped in front of her. No tears, no visible panic, just resolution. I didn't expect the door to be unlocked, he replied. A pause, then she nodded, as if acknowledging a minor oversight. I guess I stopped thinking about that. Stopped thinking about safety. Or stopped thinking about him. Adrian let the silence stretch. Then, you're leaving. Not a question. Eleanor exhaled something in her shoulders, relaxing, as if naming it made it easier. Yes. Another pause. Tonight? He asked. Yes. No hesitation. Adrian glanced briefly at the suitcase again. Everything you need is in there. For now. For now. He nodded once. The air between them was strangely undisturbed, like the moment before a building is demolished, when everything is still standing, but already lost. Eleanor stepped closer. I didn't want it to happen like this, she said. Adrian tilted his head slightly. Like what? So. Cold. Cold. He almost smiled. You packed your life into a suitcase. While I was at work, he said calmly. I'm not sure. Warmth was part of the plan. A flicker of irritation crossed her face. That's not fair. No, Adrian agreed softly. It's not. Silence again. But this one was different, heavier, because it was filled with everything neither of them wanted to say directly. Elena swallowed. I think you already knew. Adrian looked at her, not surprised, not offended, just confirming. I asked you once, he said. You answered. That's not what I mean. Then what do you mean? Her voice softened, almost uncertain now. You didn't fight for me. There it was. The justification finally stripped down to its core. Adrian took a step closer, not aggressive, not confrontational, just enough to close the distance. You think this is about a fight, he asked. Eleanor held his gaze. I think if I mattered, you would have tried to stop me. Adrian studied her face. The conviction, the quiet need to believe that version of the story. Then he nodded, slowly, carefully, asking someone to stay, he said, only proves they've already decided to leave. The words landed differently than she expected. Not defensive, not pleading, just final. Eleanor's expression shifted just slightly, a crack in the certainty. That's not true, she said, but it sounded weaker now. Adrian didn't respond immediately. Instead, he moved past her into the living room toward the window. The city was already transitioning into night, lights flickering on reflections multiplying, movement everywhere, inside stillness. You're going to Marcus, he said, not turning around. Yes. Does he know you're coming tonight? Another pause. Then yes. Adrian nodded, eyes fixed on the glass. Of course he does. Elena watched him, something uneasy growing beneath her composure. Why aren't you angry? She asked. He turned then, slowly. Would it change anything, he asked. That's not the point. It's exactly the point. His voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. You've already made your decision. Anger would just make this more comfortable for you. Her brow furrowed. Comfortable, yes, Adrian said. If I yelled, if I broke something, if I begged you could leave, knowing you were escaping something unbearable. A beat. But this, he gestured lightly between them. This forces you to sit with what you actually did. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was exposing. Eleanor looked away first. I didn't plan this, she said quietly. Adrian's gaze lingered on her a moment longer. Then he walked toward the kitchen, picked up his phone, unlocked it, checked something, briefly, then set it down again. Nothing about this feels accidental, he said. Elena's voice rose, slightly defensive again. Feelings don't follow a schedule, Adrian. No, he agreed, but choices do. That landed. She didn't respond. Instead, she reached for her suitcase handle. The small click of it extending echoed louder than it should have. Adrian watched, not the action, but the absence of hesitation behind it. Are you happy? He asked suddenly. The question caught her off guard. She blinked. What with him? Adrian clarified. A pause. Then she nodded. Yes. Another small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Not mocking, not bitter, just understanding. Then you should go, he said. Eleanor hesitated. For the first time since he walked in, you're not going to stop me, she said. It wasn't a question. It was confusion. Adrian shook his head. No. Something in her expression faltered just briefly, as if a part of her had expected resistance, something to push against. Without it, the decision felt heavier. Okay, she said softly. She moved toward the door, each step measured, final. Her hand reached for the handle, paused. Then Adrian. He didn't respond immediately, just looked at her. I'm sorry, she said. This time it sounded closer to the truth, but not complete. Adrian held her gaze for a long moment, then asked quietly, Did you ever once think I wouldn't notice? Elena froze. The same stillness as before, but now something inside it shifted. She started, but no answer came. Because the question wasn't about discovery, it was about intention, and she didn't have one that would make sense. Adrian nodded once, as if her silence had answered enough. Take care of yourself, he said. Not a farewell, not forgiveness, just distance. Elena opened the door, stepped out, and then she was gone. The door closed softly behind her. No slam, no echo, just absence. Adrian stood there for a moment, listening, not for her footsteps, but for the space she left behind. Then he walked back to the living room, picked up his phone again, opened the message thread, Marcus. This time he didn't hesitate. He scrolled, read every message, every timestamp, every carefully hidden truth that had never really been hidden. His expression didn't change, but something behind it settled, like a final piece locking into place. After a moment he typed, just one line, then hit send. He didn't wait for a response. Instead, he set the phone down, walked to the window, and looked out over the city. Below, everything continued. Uninterrupted, unaware. Adrian's reflection stared back at him, alone now. But not broken. Not even surprised. Just awake. Marcus replied at 7:12 p.m. Adrian didn't read it immediately. The phone lit up once, then dimmed. A quiet pulse of urgency waiting to be acknowledged. He let it sit on the glass table face up. This time, unlike Elena's habit, no need to hide anything now. Outside, the city moved with its usual precision. Inside, time slowed into something deliberate. At 7:18, Adrian picked it up. One message. Marcus, we need to talk. Adrian stared at it longer than necessary, not because of what it said, but because of what it didn't. No denial, no confusion, no what are you talking about, just alignment. He typed back, "You should have done that earlier." Send! The typing bubble appeared almost instantly, then disappeared, then returned. Adrian watched it like a pattern unfolding, predictable, hesitant, rehearsed. Another message came. "Marcus, it's not what you think." Adrian let out a quiet breath through his nose. Of course. He didn't respond. Instead, he tapped into the thread history, scrolled, not searching for evidence. He already had that. He was searching for origin. The beginning, where it stopped being coincidence and became choice. 3 months ago. That was where the tone shifted. The messages became more frequent, less filtered. Small overlaps, Marcus texting Eleanor while Adrian was in the same room. The kind of risk people only take when they believe they won't be questioned. Adrian paused on one message. "Marcus, he doesn't even look at you when you talk." A reply from Elena. "He's just like that." Adrian's thumb hovered over the screen. He read it again. Not the accusation, the acceptance. "He's just like that." Not a complaint, a conclusion. Filed, accepted, justified. Another scroll. Further back, 5 months. A photo. Eleanor had sent it. Edit had sent it. A glass of wine on a balcony Adrian didn't recognize. "Wish you were here." Marcus's reply. "Soon. Soon." Adrian leaned back slightly, the leather couch creaking under the shift of weight. That wasn't impulsive. That wasn't accidental. That was anticipated. His phone buzzed again. "Marcus, Adrian, please. Let me explain." Explain. Adrian locked the phone, set it down. And for the first time that night he laughed, not loudly, not bitterly, just briefly, because the explanation wasn't coming. It had already been written in hundreds of small, quiet decisions. The next morning Adrian didn't go to work. He stayed in the apartment, not out of grief, but because the space itself had become evidence. He moved slowly through each room. The kitchen, the living area, the bedroom, not looking for what was missing, but for what had been replaced. He opened drawers, not searching, cataloging. The wine glasses rearranged. The books, some gone, others shifted. Even the scent of the room felt altered, less her, more neutral, temporary, as if she had been leaving long before she physically did. At 10:42 a.m., Adrian sat down at the dining table, laptop open, phone beside it. This time he opened Elena's cloud backup, not by guessing, by knowing. She had never changed her passwords, not because she trusted him, but because she didn't believe he would look. A different kind of blindness. The files loaded, photos, notes, messages, fragments of a life that had slowly diverged from his. He clicked into a folder labeled simply drafts. Inside, unsent messages. Half-written thoughts, things she had never said out loud. Adrian opened the most recent one. "Sometimes I think Adrian already knows." His eyes didn't move. He kept reading. "And the worst part is, I don't think he cares." A pause in the text. "Then, he's so calm all the time. Like nothing touches him. Like I could disappear and he'd just adjust." Adrian leaned back slowly. The room didn't change, but something inside it did. He scrolled. Another entry. Earlier. "Marcus says I deserve more. That I deserve to be seen. And I believe him. Then, but part of me wonders if I'm just filling a silence." Adrian never noticed. Adrian closed his eyes briefly, not from pain, from recognition. The betrayal wasn't where he thought it was. Not in the messages, not in the secrecy, but in the story. The version of him they had both agreed on without ever asking him if it was true. His phone buzzed again. "Marcus." This time Adrian answered. Not with a message, with a call. It rang once, twice. Then Adrian. Marcus's voice, tight, controlled, trying to sound steady. Adrian didn't speak immediately. He let the silence stretch, just long enough to shift the balance. "You wanted to talk," Adrian said. Finally, a breath on the other end. "Yeah. I know how this looks. It looks exactly like what it is," Adrian cut in. Another pause. Then Marcus exhaled. It wasn't planned. Adrian almost smiled again. You keep saying that, he said, and yet you kept choosing it. Silence. Then, we didn't mean for it to go this far. Adrian's gaze had drifted to the window, to his own reflection. You didn't mean to get caught, he corrected. That's not fair. No, Adrian said softly. What's not fair is building something behind someone's back while convincing yourself they're too indifferent to notice. That landed. Marcus didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was quieter. We thought you already knew. There it was. Adrian's fingers tightened slightly around the phone. And he asked, and we thought you didn't care. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Final. Adrian let them settle, then asked very calmly, so that made it acceptable. Marcus hesitated. It made it easier. Of course it did. Adrian nodded slowly, though Marcus couldn't see it. Let me ask you something, Adrian said. Okay. When did you decide I wasn't part of my own life anymore? Marcus's breath caught. That's not... Because that's what this is, Adrian continued. Not just betrayal, reassignment, silence. You took something that belonged to all three of us, history, trust, context, and rewrote it into something that only made sense if I didn't exist. That's not what we did. It is, Adrian said, his voice still even. You just needed me to be a version of myself that wouldn't interfere. Marcus didn't argue this time, because there was nothing to argue. After the call ended, Adrian sat there for a long time. The apartment felt different now, not emptier, clearer, like a structure after demolition, nothing hidden behind the walls anymore. He picked up his phone again, opened Elena's draft one more time. Maybe he just doesn't love me enough to fight. Adrian stared at that line, then locked the screen, set the phone down. And for the first time something close to anger surfaced. Not loud, not explosive, but precise. Because now he understood they hadn't just betrayed him, they had reduced him. Turned his restraint into absence, his control into indifference, his silence into permission. Adrian stood, walked to the window. The reflection stared back again, but it wasn't the same man as the night before. This version saw the distortion, and more importantly, saw how useful it could be. 5 years later, Adrian no longer lived in the same apartment, not because he couldn't afford it, but because he didn't need to. The new place was smaller. Deliberate, clean lines, minimal furniture, nothing ornamental unless it served a purpose. Every object had been chosen, not inherited from a shared past, not left behind by someone else. Nothing here had a memory he didn't approve of. From the windows, the city still looked like it always had, restless, layered, endlessly in motion. But Adrian didn't watch it the same way anymore. He studied it. People don't leave, suddenly, Adrian said, standing in front of a glass wall filled with projections. They detach gradually, then act quickly. The room was silent. Across the table, a dozen executives watched him, with the kind of attention reserved for someone who understood things they didn't. He tapped the screen. A structural model rotated slowly. Steel beams, stress points, load distributions. This, he continued, isn't just about buildings. A faint shift in the room. Curiosity tightening. It's about behavior. He zoomed in, highlighting a specific joint. Every structure has a threshold. You don't see the failure when it begins. You see it when it's already too late to stop. A pause. People are the same. No one interrupted, because he wasn't speculating. He was precise. After the meeting, his assistant Claire caught up with him in the hallway. That was intense, she said, matching his pace. Adrian didn't slow down. It was accurate. Claire hesitated. You've been using that analogy more lately. Because it works. She studied him for a moment. You don't talk about architecture like that anymore. Adrian glanced at her briefly. I talk about what matters. Claire didn't push further. Most people didn't. There was something about Adrian now, something contained, measured, that made curiosity feel intrusive. His office was on the top floor, not the tallest building in the city, but one of the most controlled. Glass steel symmetry, no unnecessary complexity. Adrian stepped inside, setting his phone on the desk with habitual precision parallel to the edge screen facing up. Everything aligned, always. He didn't sit immediately. Instead, he walked to the window, not to admire the view, but to observe patterns. People below, movement, timing, intersections, predictable. Given enough time, everything was predictable. His phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. Adrian didn't open it right away. Instead, he let it sit, counted the seconds between vibrations. There was only one. No follow-up. Not urgent then. He picked it up. Read hi. I know this is unexpected. It's Elena. No punctuation at the end. No certainty. Adrian's thumb hovered over the screen. Then he locked it. Set the phone back down. Unmoved. At 7 p.m., Adrian was at the gym. Routine. Predictable. Controlled. Every movement measured. Every repetition intentional. Across the mirrored wall, reflections, multiplied versions of himself, repeating the same motion, each one identical, each one contained. A man nearby dropped a weight too loudly. The sound echoed. Adrian didn't look up. Disruption didn't interest him. Only patterns did. Later that night, he sat alone at his dining table. A single plate, a single glass, no background noise. Silence wasn't empty anymore. It was functional. His phone buzzed again. Same number. This time he opened it. I'm in the city. I was hoping we could talk. A pause, then another message followed. I understand if you don't want to. Adrian read both, then placed the phone face down, not out of avoidance, out of control. He finished his meal first. It wasn't until 9:12 p.m. that he picked the phone up again, opened the thread, typed, stopped, deleted, then typed again. About what send? No emotion, no invitation, just a question. The reply came faster this time. Everything. Adrian stared at the word. Everything, a convenient word, vague enough to contain anything, specific enough to suggest weight. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing slightly. 5 years, and now everything. His gaze shifted to the far wall. A series of frame sketches hung there, early designs from his career, raw, imperfect, uncertain. He hadn't removed them. Not because he liked them, but because they reminded him of something essential, what it meant to build without understanding failure. His phone buzzed again. A third message. I'm not with Marcus anymore. Adrian's expression didn't change. But something in the air did. Not tension. Recognition. Of course you're not. He didn't need details. Didn't need explanations. Outcomes were predictable. Given enough time, unstable structures collapse. He stood, walked to the window again. The city below continued indifferent, efficient, endless. Behind him, the phone rested quietly on the table. Waiting. But not for long. Adrian picked it up, typed location, send. The reply came instantly. An address, a bar. Familiar enough. Neutral ground. Adrian read it once, then again, then locked the phone. Set it down. For a moment, he didn't move. Not because he was unsure, but because he was calculating. 5 years ago, he had stood in a different apartment watching someone leave. Now someone was asking to return, not to the same place, but to the same position. Adrian reached for his jacket, put it on slowly, adjusted the cuff, checked the alignment, everything in place. As he stepped toward the door, his reflection caught briefly in the glass. Still composed, still controlled, but not the same, not invisible, not passive, not misread. He turned off the lights. The apartment went dark behind him. No hesitation, no second glance. Outside, the air was colder than expected. Adrian didn't react. He rarely did anymore. Instead, he walked toward the car, waiting at the curb. The driver stepped out, opening the door. Where to? Sir? Adrian gave the address, then paused, just slightly, as if confirming something internally. Then added, and take the long way. The driver nodded. No questions. Inside the car, Adrian leaned back, watching the city pass by in fragments of light and shadow. 5 years, long enough to forget how something felt, not long enough to forget what it meant. His phone buzzed one last time. Another message from Elena. He didn't open it. Didn't need to. Whatever it said, it was already too late to change the structure. Adrian closed his eyes, briefly. Not to rest, to focus. Because this wasn't about the past anymore. It was about design. And this time, he wasn't observing the collapse. He was deciding exactly how it would end. The bar was quieter than Adrian remembered. Not empty, just curated. Low lighting, deliberate spacing between tables. Conversations kept at a volume that suggested privacy rather than secrecy. Eleanor was already there, of course she was. She always arrived early when something mattered. Adrian noticed her before she noticed him. She sat near the back shoulders, slightly hunched, not from weakness, but from the unfamiliar weight of being seen without control. Her hair was shorter now, simpler, no longer styled to be noticed. She looked reduced, not physically, structurally. Adrian approached without rushing. When he reached the table, she looked up. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Neither of it. Not because they didn't know what to say, but because the version of each other they remembered didn't match what stood in front of them now. "Hi," Elena said finally. Adrian nodded once. "Elena." He sat across from her, placing his phone on the table screen down this time. A subtle reversal, Elena noticed. Of course she did. "You look well," she said. "Define well," Adrian replied. A faint, uncertain smile flickered across her face. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Turn simple things into questions." Adrian tilted his head slightly. "Simple things are usually where people hide the truth." A pause. Then she nodded. "Fair." A waiter approached. Adrian ordered bourbon. "Neat." Elena hesitated, then ordered water. Another small shift, he noticed. For a while, they didn't talk. Not awkwardly, just carefully. Elena's fingers rested on the edge of the table, tapping once, then stopping as if she'd caught herself revealing something too familiar. Adrian watched that, stored it. "Why now?" he asked. No preamble, no easing into it. Elena inhaled slowly. "I've thought about this conversation for a long time." "That's not an answer." She nodded again. "I know." Another breath. "I left because I thought I was choosing something better," she said. Adrian didn't interrupt. "I thought Marcus saw me in a way you didn't. I thought what we had was more real." She swallowed. "I was wrong." The words hung there. Not dramatic, not rehearsed, just late. Adrian took a sip of his drink. Let the silence stretch just enough to make her feel it. "In what way?" he asked. Elena blinked. In what way were you wrong?" Her eyes searched his face, looking for judgment, for accusation, for anything that would give her a direction. There was none. "I thought he understood me," she said slowly. "But he only understood the version of me that needed him." Adrian nodded once. "And when that version changed," he asked, "he didn't stay." "Of course he didn't. Structures built on need collapse when the need disappears." Adrian didn't say it out loud. He didn't need to. Elena leaned forward slightly. "I lost everything, Adrian." There it was, not just regret, consequence, my job, my reputation, the people who used to. She stopped herself. It all unraveled. Adrian watched her carefully. Not the words, the order, career first, then reputation, people as an afterthought. "Interesting. And Marcus?" he asked. Her expression tightened. "He's dealing with his own problems." "What kind of problems?" Elena hesitated. "Then, legal, financial. His firm is under investigation." Adrian took another sip, unsurprised. "When did that start?" he asked. "A few months ago." Adrian nodded slowly. The timing aligned. "Of course it did." "You didn't come here just to update me," he said. Elena's shoulders dropped slightly. "No." "Then why?" This time she didn't look away. "Because I need you to hear this from me." Adrian didn't react. "I hurt you," she said, "not just by leaving, but by how I justified it. By reducing you to something you weren't." A pause. "I told myself you didn't care, that you already knew and chose not to fight." Adrian's eyes flickered, just briefly. Recognition, not surprise. And now he asked. Elena's voice softened. "Now I think I didn't understand you at all." Silence. Not empty, but precise. Adrian leaned back, slightly studying her. "You didn't," he said. No anger. Just fact. Elena's eyes filled not dramatically, but enough to blur the edges. "I'm not asking you to take me back," she said quickly. "I know that's not—" "Good," Adrian said. She stopped, nodded. "Then what are you asking?" he continued. Elena hesitated. Then quietly, "Forgiveness." The word landed heavier than anything else she'd said, because it wasn't about the past. It was about relief. Adrian looked at her for a long moment, then asked, "What does that mean to you?" She blinked. What? Forgiveness, he repeated. What do you think it does? Elena struggled for a second. It means you're not holding on to anger, that you can move on. Adrian tilted his head slightly. So this is for me. She frowned. What? Moving on, he clarified. That's for me. A beat. Then what's it for you? Elena opened her mouth, then closed it, because the answer was obvious. Relief. Release. Permission to stop carrying it. Adrian nodded, slowly. I have moved on, he said. Eleanor's breath caught just slightly. Hope. There it was, misplaced. And I'm not angry, he continued. Her shoulders softened, a visible shift, as if something heavy had just been lifted. I'm glad, she said quietly. Adrian watched that moment carefully, the way her posture changed, the way her eyes lost some of their tension, the way she interpreted his calm as something generous. He didn't correct her, not yet. They talked for another hour. Not about love, not about the past in detail, just fragments, safe topics, controlled disclosures. Eleanor laughed, once off surprised at herself. Adrian allowed it. Didn't encourage it, didn't stop it. At the end she stood, so... This is it, she asked. Adrian rose as well. For now. A pause, then she nodded. Thank you. For listening. He inclined his head slightly. Take care of yourself, Elena. The same words as before. But now she heard something different in them. Closure. Maybe even kindness. Outside, the air was colder. Eleanor hesitated before walking away, then turned back. Adrienne, he looked at her. I really am sorry. This time it was clearer, more complete, but still too late. Adrian nodded once. I know, and that was enough. She left, not abruptly, not decisively, just quietly, like someone who believed the hardest part was over. Adrian remained where he was, for a moment, watching her disappear into the flow of the city. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, unlocked it, opened a different thread. Marcus, still unread. Still waiting. Adrian tapped it, scrolled, then stopped. Not at the beginning, not at the end, but somewhere in the middle where patterns became undeniable. He stared at it for a long moment, then locked the screen. Inside the bar continued as if nothing had shifted, but something had. Not in the room, in perception. To Elena this had been closure. To the outside world Adrian had already won. He was composed, successful, untouched. While the two people who betrayed him were unraveling. It looked like justice. It looked like balance. It looked like the end of the story. But Adrian knew better, because this was the most dangerous moment, not when everything collapses, but when people believe it already has. He stepped outside. The city lights reflected faintly in his eyes, calm, measured, unchanged on the surface. But beneath that, something was still in motion. Not anger, not pain. Something far more precise. Design. And this time, he wasn't just observing the outcome. He was about to define it. Adrian didn't go home. Right away. The driver asked twice for confirmation of the destination. Home, Sir Adrian looked out the window, the city sliding past in fractured reflections. Drive, he said. No direction, just movement. An hour later, he stood alone on the rooftop of his building. The door clicked shut behind him, sealing off the controlled, curated world below. Up here, there was no design, just wind roar and unstructured cutting through the silence. The skyline stretched endlessly, lights flickering like signals he no longer needed to decode. For 5 years, Adrian had believed he understood everything. Patterns, behavior, collapse. He had turned people into structures, predictable, measurable, inevitable. He had turned himself into something even more precise, untouchable. But Eleanor's voice lingered. You didn't fight for me. At the time he dismissed it, a justification, a convenient narrative. Now it didn't feel so simple. Adrian walked to the edge, stopping just short of the barrier. Below, traffic moved in perfect lines, controlled chaos. Above nothing, just open space. He exhaled slowly, and for the first time in years he didn't have a framework to contain what he was feeling. I didn't stop you. The words left his mouth quietly, not directed at anyone, just Acknowledged. He closed his eyes briefly. The memory replayed not as he had stored it, but differently now. The suitcase by the door, the calm in his voice, the absence of resistance. At the time, he had called it control, clarity. Now, he saw something else layered beneath it. Hesitation, avoidance. "You think this is about a fight?" His own words echoed back at him. Measured, certain, safe, too safe. Adrian's jaw tightened, because the truth was beginning to reorganize itself, not around what they did, but around what he didn't. He had seen it. Every message left face down, every delayed response, every micro shift in Elena's voice. He had catalogued it, understood it, predicted it. But he never interrupted it. Why? The question came sharper now, not analytical, personal. He opened his eyes. The city didn't answer. It never did, because stopping it would have required something he had avoided his entire life. Not anger, not confrontation, exposure. To say, "I see what you're doing," to risk being wrong, to risk being dismissed, to risk needing someone to choose him. Adrian let out a quiet, almost humorless breath. "So I let it happen." The words settled heavier than anything else, not as a strategy, not as patience, but as delay. A memory surfaced uninvited this time. Earlier than Elena, earlier than Marcus, a different room, a different silence. His father at the dinner table speaking in controlled tones. His mother, quiet nodding, adjusting, never escalating. Conflict didn't explode in that house. It dissolved, ignored, until it became absence. Adrian had learned early, stillness keeps things intact. Emotion destabilizes. But that wasn't control. That was fear refined into something socially acceptable. He ran a hand over his face, the movement slower than usual. For years, he had believed he was different, stronger, more disciplined. Now, standing alone with no one to observe, he saw the fracture. "You weren't invisible," he said quietly, as if speaking to Elena. Then after a beat, "I made myself optional." The realization landed with precision, because it wasn't about her choosing Marcus. It was about him never forcing the question. If he had confronted her earlier, would she have stayed? Would she have left anyway? He didn't know. And for the first time, that uncertainty unsettled him. Adrian stepped back from the edge. The wind shifted colder now, less distant. Everything he had built over the past 5 years, the control, the detachment, the analysis, it all rested on one assumption, that he had been in control from the beginning. But what if he had only taken control after losing it? The thought didn't break him. It didn't shatter anything, but it realigned things, subtly, dangerously. Because if his foundation was flawed, then everything built on top of it needed to be reevaluated. Adrian walked to the center of the rooftop, no edges, no boundaries, just space. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't check it, not yet. "I didn't lose them," he said. The sentence formed slowly, carefully. "I let them go, without testing anything." A pause. "And then I built a life around the idea that I had chosen that." Another layer, another shift. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the phone, looked at the screen. Marcus, a message, unread, still waiting. Adrian stared at the name. Not as a symbol of betrayal, but as a variable, unresolved. For 5 years, he had observed from a distance, measured outcomes, let consequences unfold naturally. But now, he understood something he hadn't before. Observation wasn't the same as control, and detachment wasn't the same as strength. If he wanted to define the ending, he couldn't remain outside of it. Adrian unlocked the phone, opened the message, read it. "I know I don't deserve it, but I need to see you." A faint shift in his expression. Not anger, not satisfaction, something closer to decision. This wasn't about Elena anymore. Not entirely. And it wasn't about Marcus. It was about the version of himself who had stood in that apartment 5 years ago and chosen silence over risk. Adrian typed. This time, no hesitation, no rewriting, no deletion. "Tomorrow, 8 p.m. He paused, then added, "Come alone, send." The message delivered instantly. No delay, no uncertainty. Adrian slipped the phone back into his pocket, looked out at the city one more time. But this time he wasn't observing patterns. He was entering them. Because the next move wouldn't be passive, wouldn't be controlled from a distance. It would be direct, intentional, unavoidable. And for the first time since everything began, Adrian wasn't just reacting to what had already happened. He was deciding what it would finally mean. The wind cut across the rooftop again. Sharper now, clearer. Adrian turned toward the door, didn't hesitate, didn't look back, because whatever came next wouldn't be about what he lost. It would be about what he was finally willing to confront. The room was too bright, not in a dramatic way, just evenly lit, deliberately neutral. Glass walls, clean lines, a long table that reflected everything placed on it with quiet precision. Adrian chose the location carefully. Not a bar, not a restaurant, not a place tied to memory. A conference room in one of his buildings high enough above the city to feel detached, controlled, and impossible to escape emotionally. Marcus arrived first. Of course he did. He stood near the window, hands in his pockets, posture rigid in a way that tried to look casual, but failed. The version of him Adrian remembered, confident, effortless, was gone. This one calculated every breath, every shift. When Adrian entered, Marcus turned immediately. "Hey," Marcus said. The word sounded wrong in the space between them. Adrian didn't respond to it. He walked in, closed the door behind him with a soft click, and placed his phone on the table screen, up this time. Deliberate. Marcus noticed. "Thank you for coming," Marcus added quickly. Adrian sat down. "Sit," he said. Not aggressive, not loud, just instruction. Marcus obeyed. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was structured. Adrian let it settle before he began. "You said you needed to see me," he said. Marcus nodded. "Yeah." Why? Marcus exhaled slowly, hands clasping together on the table. "I know what I did," he said. "I know there's no excuse." Adrian didn't interrupt. "I thought I understood you." Marcus continued. "I thought you didn't." He stopped himself, then corrected that you wouldn't care the way most people would. A flicker in Adrian's eyes. Recognition. "I was wrong," Marcus said quietly. "Yes," Adrian replied. The simplicity of it landed harder than anger would have. Marcus swallowed. "I lost everything, Adrian. My firm. The case against me, it's not just rumors, it's real. I made decisions I wouldn't have made if what Adrian asked." Marcus hesitated. "If I hadn't convinced myself I was already past the point of consequences." Adrian leaned back slightly. "There's always a point of consequence," he said. "People just choose when to acknowledge it." Marcus nodded almost immediately. "I know that now." "Of course you do." Adrian didn't say it. He didn't need to. The door opened again. Elena stepped in. She froze when she saw Marcus. "You didn't tell me he'd be here," she said to Adrian. "I didn't tell him you would be either," Adrian replied. Her eyes moved between them. Tension sharpened instantly. "This isn't what I agreed to," she said. "You didn't agree to anything," Adrian said calmly. "You asked to be heard." A beat. "This is me listening." Elena hesitated. Then slowly she stepped further into the room, closed the door behind her. Now there were 3 of them, again, but nothing about this resembled what they used to be. Elena took a seat across from Marcus, not looking at him. Marcus didn't look at her either. Adrian observed both, not with curiosity, with clarity. "Good," he said quietly. "Now, it's accurate." Elena frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Adrian replied, "we're no longer pretending this only affected one relationship." Silence. Heavy. Necessary. Adrian reached for his phone. Unlocked it, turned the screen toward them. A document. Simple, organized, precise. Dates, times, messages, not chaotic, not emotional, structured. "What is that?" Elena asked, her voice tightening. "Context," Adrian said. Marcus leaned forward slightly, eyes scanning. Recognition hit first. Then something sharper. "You kept this?" he asked. Adrian nodded once. "From the beginning." Elena's breath caught. "You documented us." "Not you," Adrian corrected. "Patterns." A pause. "I just included you in them." Marcus sat back, running a hand through his hair. "That's insane." "No," Adrian said calmly. "It's accurate." Elena's eyes moved rapidly across the screen. The timestamps, the overlaps, the things she thought were hidden laid out without commentary, without accusation, just undeniable. "You knew," she said softly. Adrian looked at her. Yes, the word landed differently this time. Not as a question, as confirmation. Elena's voice trembled, not dramatically, but enough to expose something deeper. "Then why didn't you stop it?" she asked. There it was. The question that had lived between all of them, now finally spoken out loud. Adrian didn't answer immediately. He let the silence hold it. Then, because I wanted to see what you would choose, he said. Marcus frowned. That's not... It's exactly what it is, Adrian cut in. His voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. You both built a version of me that made your choices easier. I wanted to know if that version would hold when nothing stopped you. A pause. It did. The words settled heavily, because they weren't emotional. They were conclusive. Elena shook her head, slightly. Confusion, mixing with something closer to guilt. That's not fair, she said. Adrian tilted his head. No. You set us up to fail. No, Adrian said quietly. I removed interference. Marcus exhaled sharply. That's the same thing. It's not, Adrian replied. One is manipulation, the other is observation, a beat. You made your choices without pressure. That's the only way they mean anything. The room fell silent again. But this time, it wasn't about what they had done. It was about what he hadn't. Eleanor leaned forward, voice softer now. Adrian, we're here because we know we were wrong. He nodded. I know. Marcus spoke next. We're not asking for everything to go back. Just something, some kind of closure. Closure. Adrian almost smiled. Not kindly, just knowingly. He stood, slowly, deliberately. Both of them looked up instinctively, as if the shift in height changed something fundamental. You think, this is where I give you that, Adrian said. Neither of them responded. Because they did, of course they did. You think I tell you it's okay? He continued. That I understand. That I forgive you. Elena's eyes filled again. Marcus looked down. Adrian walked around the table, not toward them, past them, creating distance instead of closing it. I'm not angry, he said. True. I'm not even hurt. Not anymore. Also true. He stopped near the window looking out at the city. But forgiveness, he added, isn't something I owe you. The words didn't land loudly, but they settled deeper than anything else. Eleanor stood now. Adrian, please. He turned, not sharply, but finally. Directly. No, he said, simple, complete. You don't get to use me to feel better about what you did. Silence. You don't get to rewrite this ending so you can live with it. Marcus's voice was low. That's not what this is. Adrian looked at him. It is, he said. A pause. You just don't like how it sounds when someone else says it. Eleanor's composure broke slightly. Not loudly, but enough. Then what was all of this for? She asked, gesturing around the room. Why bring us here? Adrian considered the question, then answered, because 5 years ago I stood in a room like this. He gestured lightly and said nothing when it mattered. A beat. This time I'm not doing that. The shift was subtle but absolute. I let you leave without being seen clearly, Adrian continued. That was my mistake. He held her gaze. Not anymore. Elena's voice dropped. So this is it, Adrian nodded. Yes. Marcus looked up. You're just walking away. Adrian met his eyes. I already did, he said. A pause. This is just where you finally understand it. No one spoke after that because there was nothing left that could change the outcome. Adrian picked up his phone, didn't look at the screen, didn't check for messages, just took it with him. He walked to the door, opened it, paused just slightly, not to reconsider, but to acknowledge something internal. Then he stepped out and closed it behind him. Inside the room, the silence didn't dissolve. It expanded, filling every space where justification used to exist. Eleanor sank slowly back into her chair. Marcus didn't move. Neither of them looked at each other because, for the first time, there was no version of the story left where they weren't exactly who they had chosen to be. Outside, Adrian walked down the hallway, steady, unhurried, unaffected on the surface. But something had shifted, not in what he had lost, but in what he no longer needed. The elevator doors opened. He stepped inside, alone. As they closed, his reflection appeared briefly in the mirrored surface. The same man, but not the same presence. No longer waiting, no longer observing from a distance, no longer needing to be understood to be complete. 5 years ago, he asked, did you ever once think I wouldn't notice? Now, the answer no longer mattered, because the version of him who needed it no longer existed.